So, as you all probably have heard at this point, there was a meeting of the minds that occurred a few days ago. I saw Matty tweeted out, like maybe late last week. He was like, I'm about to edit the most important video of my career. I was like, oh God, that normally, like that, when you hear that from a YouTuber or streamer, that sounds like, okay, they're pregnant, which for Matty is probably not that likely. They're retiring and quitting, like, you know, a Matt Pat type of situation, or they're about to try and get somebody canceled. Like normally it's not great, you know, normally it's not great, but people waited with an expectant, pregnant hunger, as did we, as we light our Todd candle. Somebody asked me if I was going to sell these. No, you can't sell something this holy. So turns out what that was an interview with the one and only Todd Howard. Now, right off the bat, this is probably one of the best people you could get to interview Todd. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I think Matty not only has been covering these games for so freaking long, but he's tried to be very, very fair with it. And you know, he's at his core, he's a Bethesda Game Studios fan. Like that is what Matty is at his very, very core. And I would much rather them give Matty the interview than some nameless person at IGN you've never heard of that is going to ask the corporate approved list of questions and that's it. Like it's not useful. This, I presume, I have not watched it yet intentionally because I wanted to watch it with you guys on stream. This I'm presuming and I would guess is going to be a very good interview. I don't expect Matty to be like a dick or anything. I wouldn't want anybody to be a dick, but I do expect him to be able to have a productive conversation with Todd and ask some actually like useful questions, as opposed to some of the other interviews we've seen with Todd where like it's some crew of 40, 50-year-old men that I think at one time were big in the industry. And they're like, Todd, what's your shoe size? Todd, in Starfield, can we get a pet fish? Todd, you know, it's just not useful. It's all just a bunch of patting him on the back and circle jerking. And it's just not that useful when you have somebody like Todd that you can actually talk to and ask questions. Because as we've seen, I think the reason so many people have talked about this interview that Matty did with Todd is because he can actually ask questions the community wants answers to. Whereas a lot of the guys that typically get a hold of a Todd Howard type of guy are just journalists who happen to be working in gaming. And that's kind of where the association stops. There was an example I talked about a while back where we went to a press media event thing for, I'll keep it vague, a pretty big AAA game. And there were a bunch of media outlets there. You know, IGN had some people there. GameSpot had some people there. Smaller, more independent news sites had some people there. And one of the groups that we were hanging out with was with one of those gaming journalism sites or whatever. And there was a couple of very nice people there. And they were very young. I had never seen them before. It wasn't like I recognized them from videos or anything. But we would like chat with them and talk with them as we went through the events of the media, whatever. And at one point, one of them turns to us and it's just like, yeah, I feel really out of place. And we're like, why? Like, you're good? Like, I don't feel awkward. Like, we're all having a great time. They're like, no, I just feel out of place because like, I'm not even really a gamer. Like, what? And they follow it. They're like, yeah, I mean, I basically was hired because they wanted to like come off younger when we were doing segments and stuff on videos and stuff. I don't really play games. I play some games on my phone. Like I really like Candy Crush. I was like, oh, okay, maybe you should feel out of place. You know, but like that's how a lot of these places operate. I just scratched a mosquito bite of mine. If I'm bleeding, that's why. I swear I'm not seething and scratching myself. That I think is a reflection, or for me, made me realize, okay, if this is like the one person that was willing to talk about that and say that they are not a gamer, they're just working here because they got a journalism degree and they wanted to work in digital stuff and they happened to get a job at this outlet. Like, how many people would not say that where that's true, where they're not really gamers? There's of course the famous story of the guy, the journalist, that gets stuck on Cuphead. Specifically, it was stuck on the tutorial for Cuphead. So like they posted this like preview of Cuphead where it was like, if I recall correctly, it was like 10 minutes or something of oh God, it's so painful to watch. I forgot about how painful it was to watch. It's like a 10-minute early access gameplay clip, and it's just 10 minutes of being stuck in the tutorial, and it's insane. And they published it, you know, it was shocking. It was really, really shocking. And it just keeps going, man. It's just, oh God, it just keeps going. Okay, I gotta turn it off. I could never get anything done if I'm watching that. So anyway, that's the kind of, like, those people, there are some great journalists in, you know, the upper echelons of some of these media companies. Don't get me wrong. There are some great guys. Met some of them at SGF. And if they feel like I'm talking about them and targeting them with this little diatribe, I'm probably not. Like, if we've talked, we've interacted, no, I'm not talking about you. We're talking about like the no-name kind of, it's not really bureaucrats, but like that same kind of unelected by the people position where you don't have any foothold in the industry other than that you interviewed and got a job, and then you get access to God Howard himself. I would much rather somebody like Matty get to do these interviews after grinding out content on their games for well over a decade. And so now he gets that access. And you're seeing it in the view counts. I mean, I'm not going to be a jerk or anything. I'm not going to pull up any other interviews Todd's done with some other gaming outlets and compare the views, because there were interviews Todd did before Starfield came out when it was in like peak hype phase. And he did some with like friendly people that weren't going to push him too hard. And those videos have 50, 60, 70,000 views. They were clipped all over the place. And those clipped videos from other YouTubers and creators did hundreds of thousands of views. But like, this is what you actually get when you go onto a platform of somebody that talks about your game and has a community built up around your games, as opposed to just going to friendly territory and getting softball questions. So all told, this huge preamble that Jacob can label in the timestamps preamble. All of this to say, I think that this is awesome that Todd was willing to speak with Matty. I'm super happy for Matty. And if anybody deserved this interview, I think it's him. So I think it's a great thing. And I hope this keeps going. I hope that like we get interviews of Miyazaki from Vatavidia. You know, I hope we get those types of interactions between the developers and the actual communities that play the game. It's not that helpful to have some no-name journalist interview somebody about a game that they don't really know much about. It's much better to go right to the source of the community and get their feedback and questions bounced back and forth. So I think this is awesome. Let's see what we've got. And I'm muted. Sorry, everyone. Oh, geez. I'm a professional streamer here. Continue.
Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and welcome to what was previously thought to be the impossible. Indeed, I am joined by the absolute legend himself, Todd Howard, for a very special interview. Sir, how are you today? Thank you for joining me.
Salutations. I am so excited to be here. You'd be surprised like how many of your videos I watch. I know we've met before.
Yes.
And I've talked about that back in the day. You're kind of one of the originals for us, and followed your career and what you've done. And, you know, thanks for everything that you've done for our games and talking about them to our fans. And, you know, everybody here loves the channel.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Keep it that way, Matty. Keep it that way. I swear to God. Yeah, he did meet Todd previously. I mentioned this right before we started this segment. I found the video where Matty recaps. I met all the Bethesda people and more. Here is the story on my experience at this year's E3 in 2016. You see that Matty in the distance? You can climb him. Jesus. Like, but look at this. Look at this. Young Matty. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure this is like his childhood bedroom, because he made videos in this room for like 8-9 years, going all the way back to like 2013. Like,
Matty here today, trying something a little bit different today. I'm vlogging. So I'm finally home now after a long, tiring week at E3, averaging about 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. So it's nice to be in my comfy bed. Oh my God. I hope you guys don't mind if I vlog here for a little bit. So I met Todd.
Dude, These videos were the rage back in the day. These kind of like super casual, impromptu vlog. Oh man, those are the days.
I met Brian Delaney, I met Courtney Taylor, I met Pete Hines, I met some of my idols in gaming. This has just been an insane week. And a lot of you guys wanted to know about me meeting the Bethesda gang, so I'm gonna tell you guys about that. And then if you want to stay afterwards, I'll tell you a little bit more about my E3 experience. So I know what you guys all want to know. Let's talk about Matty meeting Todd Howard. Yeah, so to say
this is something people outside the gaming industry just don't understand, specifically outside like the Bethesda sphere. It's like, okay, you met Todd Howard. Okay, cool. But Todd, because he's so visible, it's like meeting Steve Jobs. You know, it's like meeting the guy. Even though like a lot of other people are involved in this and make their project successful, it's a big deal. It's God Howard.
I was nervous was probably an understatement, but I did a really good job handling myself. I know the presumable reaction that you guys expected from me was for me to fanboy and be springing out of my seat at Todd like, holy shit, dude, what's up, man? But I'm good friends with Matt Grandstaff, and he's like, Todd's looking for you. He'd love to meet you. And I'm thinking like, okay, here we go. So he says, come back to the booth at 3:30 and Todd will be there. So we get back there. He says, I'm gonna go grab Todd, and Todd comes out. And the first thing he says to me is salutation. And to tell you the truth, guys, I know it's really hard to believe, but I was actually pretty calm, cool, and collected and had a genuine conversation with him for about like a half hour or so. And I think the biggest surprise of this entire conversation is that you'd imagine I'd be kind of coming at Todd fanboying about his work and stuff, but I feel like he's heard that enough where I just wanted to talk to him one-on-one as a human. He was actually aggressively complimenting my work. He said that I'm respectful, I'm intelligent. He goes to me directly for feedback. He said I'm one of the best, if not the best person out there he's seen. He said,
just full stop. You're like the best person I've ever seen.
make this a career, do not give up. He showered me in compliments, if I'm quite honest. And it was just insane. Not because it's Todd Howard, but just because this is like a direct line to Bethesda, and you don't realize how much they watch your stuff until Todd started quoting me, mentioning videos. I introduced him to Noah. He knew exactly who he was right away from the podcast. He met Connor, my best friend.
What are those posters, Maddie? Matthew, what are those posters? Does anyone know what those posters are?
Shout out to the chess club.
Wow, Maddie, MrMattyPlays is right. Wow, we were. Anyway, so Maddie met Todd back in like 2016. And this is something that's like not really a surprise to me. I've been doing this work on this big Starfield critique, and it's going to be a bit of a doozy. Very different, I think, than some of my previous videos. Like, we're going to try to do something much more comprehensive. I don't want to just talk about the game and like re-review it. I don't want to just do that. Like, we'll talk about the game again and go through what works, what doesn't, what they've done in the patches and stuff. But I really want to delve into all sorts of intricacies of how Starfield came about and Todd's career and how all of this went. And as part of that, I dug into a bunch of stuff and interviews from back in the day. Interestingly enough, like we'll talk about this in the critique a lot, of course. So don't get it twisted. I'm going to talk about this a good amount, but like a little bitty thing you might not have heard of. Apparently, Todd Howard has a brother named Jeffrey Howard. And this article from 2008, I've archived it because it's impossible to find. It's on the Morning Call, but it was posted in October of 2008, and it talks about the brothers Howard and how these two brothers are both involved in creative pursuits. One of those things is that Todd, of course, makes video games, but his brother, Jeffrey Howard, is a writer, and his brother has written things like that movie Planes. He wrote the movie Planes, which is like a Cars spinoff. He's written Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, The Pirate Fairy, Planes, Pixie Hollow Games, Tinkerbell and the Great Fairy Rescue, Tinkerbell, all of these. Phineas and Ferb the movie, Kansas Against the Universe, he wrote that. So his brother is also a creative guy. Who knew, right? Oh shit, I hate planes. So, yeah, I need a Jeff candle now. Yeah, let's just fully freak out Todd. Just like, I have a candle of your whole family, Todd. I don't even know what he would do. But anyway, Todd, though, is somebody that's been very involved with the community for a long time. There were interviews back around the time of Oblivion and Fallout 3 where he was saying how he reads all the forums. He's on the forums all day, keeping in touch with fans and seeing feedback and all that. And some of these still exist today. I mean, these posts are from April of 1997. These were on Usenet, which is a separate, like, old forum that used to exist that was later merged. Some of them at least were merged into Google groups and backed up in that way. Otherwise, these would just be gone. But this post was made April 4th of 1997. And you can see, yeah, TOL was way short. Somebody mentioned Sundog. I can't believe I didn't even think of that. That game had an interface to rival most new games with its cool object-based inventory. Now a space RPG? That would be something. Todd, Bethesda. So he's been very involved in these community interactions for a very long time. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Todd was talking with Mr. Matty and interacting with him, and then also the rest of the community. I think he watches a lot more of these interactions than people may realize. A lot of these developers, like, you'd be surprised how many YouTube videos and streamers and stuff they're interacting with and watching. There will be times where developers are like hopping on Twitch and they're sorting by their game and they're watching player feedback of that, trying to learn from that feedback. There was the story, who was it? Was it The Last of Us where PewDiePie was playing it and somebody went back, one of the devs, like Neil Druckmann or somebody, was watching PewDiePie play, or was it God of War 2018? I can't remember. Anyway, but there's stories of devs that do this all the time. Of course, they're not going to comment on videos or tell you that they've watched it, because what are they, like, they don't need to do that. But it does happen more than you might realize. With how involved Todd may be with creators, why outlaw critical content and videos from Bethesda developers? That's a good question. Now, I will say, I've seen a shift. I have seen a shift. After ZeniMax was acquired by Microsoft and Xbox, they respond to my emails again. They will send me review codes. As we saw with Starfield, they sent me a Starfield review code, even though I was quite skeptical leading up to the game's launch. It seems like there's been an attitude shift where they're welcoming in critics and people that might not have the best things to say, because they know that that will lead to a better product in the end, as opposed to just hiring yes men to come in and just tell you everything's great. So I think there's been a bit of a shift. And I hope that that is the case and it's not just suspicions, because I do think that that will actually lead to better results. So anyway, we're only 42 seconds into this. I'm doing a great job of turning this into transformative content. Sorry, everyone. Just play the damn video, Luke.
Because I know sometimes I come in hot, I love hard, and then, you know, when things go south, sometimes criticism is harsh. So I appreciate that. Thank you again for being here. And to really kick us off, you know, obviously I got a million questions for you, man, but I want to know how you're doing, Todd. I want to know how you're doing. Like, I feel like the people are a little concerned. You're spread thin, right? That's the thought process. The Fallout TV show, Starfield support, Elder Scrolls 6, doing a little Indiana Jones. I just want to know how you're feeling to kick things off before we get into the tough stuff. Like,
that's a very nice question. I appreciate that. I'm doing great. And look, I think the main thing for everybody to remember is, you know, I have a whole studio of amazing people that I get to work with. By no means is it just me. And so many people I've worked with over really decades, and a lot of new people. Studio's about, 450 people right now, but folks like Ashley Chang, who's the managing director here, and Angela Browder, who's the production director, runs a studio here in Rockville. And so a lot of us have worked together for a while. And, yes, I do get to do a lot of stuff, but it's all great. And I do have some things that I've gotten better at in, I would say, delegating, as well as how to use my days and sort of which hours I block off for meetings and everything. But you look at what we're doing, I just, love it all. This is like my life.
Good time.
It's not just, I don't have any hobbies. I like video games. I love our games. I love our fans. So it's kind of nonstop.
On that note, then, what have you been playing lately? Have you been, what's been inspiring you lately? You're always creating, and I feel like you guys have been doing so much, as you mentioned. It's really like a high point. I kind of marked that 2003 to 2008 stretch. You guys just had so many games coming out between Morrowind, Fallout 3. It feels like kind of that stretch again. There was just so much happening with BGS, where I remember there was a time you guys would just fall silent. So with you making so much, for me at least, the creative inspiration comes from a lot of games. So have you been playing anything that's been kind of lighting your fire and making you excited to come into the studio and get to work?
Great question. Why don't more people ask devs what they're playing? What are their inspirations? Like, again, seems like a bit of a layup, but you'd be shocked at how often it's like the questions that seem obvious just slip past people. I don't know. What would Todd, if I didn't know anything, what would Todd Howard play? He's probably going to say like Fallout 76 or something because he's still a salesman. Probably Fallout 76. I'm guessing that's what he's going to say. I haven't listened to this, so I'm not sure, but we'll see. Adding is not transforming it. Let me demonstrate a little something. Let me add one word. Not adding is not transforming it. I just transformed the meaning of your sentence by making it make less sense by adding a word. Yes, adding things transforms things.
I mean, it sounds weird, but like we are putting out a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff that we're doing. So right now I'm enjoying playing Shattered Space. I'm obviously playing Indiana Jones. So, I do play a lot of our own stuff. Whenever we're updating Starfield, I'm jumping in there as well just to play through those updates. Outside of ours, let's see. I do jump a lot lately between Diablo 4, depending on my mood. Forza, I love Forza. Been playing some Red Dead 2 again lately. Cyberpunk, I think, is great. I could not be more excited for the EA Sports college football.
I know. I thought of you right away.
I'll tell you what, and I know Andrew Wilson, so they dropped that trailer, and I emailed him. And I literally got I got like welled up. And it's a weird thing. Like, this is going to be like completely ridiculous for coming from me. Like, they haven't made a sequel to that game for like 11 years, 12 years,
Yeah.
2014.
I think 14 was the last one. Yeah.
And like, I missed the hell out of that game. Like, I'm never going to play college football. And that was my avenue for like experiencing that world.
Right.
And I love college football. And then it went away, and kind of like that period.
Real quick, what's the difference between Madden and this? They're both EA. Is there any difference, or is it just different rosters? Because he says he got like welled up when he saw it announced. They haven't done one in like 10 years. But like, if it's just different teams, why would you get, granted, sports, I don't generally like get the craze around like team sports. I just have never felt it. But some people do get like really into it. I'm just not one of those people. It's never really happened for me. A few rules differences. Yeah, like one, you have to have both feet touch in the end zone before you go out of bounds, and it counts as a touchdown. I think college, it's 1 foot. NFL, it's both feet have to touch. Little stuff like that. In college, you get the bands. Oh, well, there you go.
Period of my life in the summer, I miss it so much. And I think that trailer, that is the greatest trailer for a sports game I've ever seen. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I dropped so many sports games at this point. So I'm just like, it looks like something new and refreshing. So I'll be there right with you. All right. We got a good feel of how you're doing, what you're playing. Let's get into some fun stuff beyond that, right? When we started to work on getting this interview together, you know where my head went right away. I got to talk to Todd about Fallout. I got to see what's going on here. More, I'm focused on the future of Fallout. There's a lot going on with 76, but really what I'm looking at here is we're at this point now where Fallout's at its most popular. At least that's seemingly where it's at with the TV show combined with the 76 strong resurgence. Fallout 4 continues to do well. Like, it's just continuing to grow and grow in popularity. Let's talk a little bit about New Vegas too. Like, what would you say is the holdup for such a potential, for many fans, obvious, very exciting success and project here? Like, it seemed like when I listened to your interview with Kind of Funny, there are some things in motion with Fallout. I doubt you can specify here today, but it seems like for a lot of fans, the frustration is like, well, why were we waiting in the first place? Like, it was already pretty big and established and successful. Was it like seeking partners? Like, what's going on with the potential New Vegas too? Like, what's the feel with moving forward with Fallout?
Great question. Again, I think a lot of people don't ask questions this direct because there's always a bit of a weird energy when you bring up New Vegas. So yeah, Todd, what's up?
Well, look, first, I agree with the statement that Fallout's never been more popular. And looking at the number of players coming to those games, obviously the popularity of the TV show. So when, we give a lot of thought to kind of franchise management. I spend a lot of time thinking about franchises I love, what I've seen out there in terms of content. And so for us, it's sort of game planning out. Number one, making sure Fallout is relevant in the world. And I think, well, clearly it is. And
Check.
people are hungry for even more. We've never stopped doing, Fallout work. A lot of that work goes on, obviously, in Fallout 76. We have the Skyline Valley update out today.
Yeah.
And so really, really excited with where that game is at. Feel really fortunate, and the team so proud of the work that's been done there. And then for other Fallout games in the future, obviously I can't talk about those right now, but I would say sort of rushing through them, or we need to get stuff out that is different than the work we're doing in 76. We don't feel like we need to rush any of that. Right now, the Fallout TV show fills a certain niche in terms of the franchise and storytelling. Totally get the desire for a new kind of mainline single player game. And look, those things take time. I don't think it's bad for people to miss things.
Right.
As well. So we just want to get it right and make sure that everything we're doing in a franchise, whether it's Elder Scrolls or Fallout or now Starfield, that those become, meaningful moments for everybody who love these franchises as much as we do.
I think it's also when people miss things, it's way easier to get hyped for the next thing. As he just established with that college football game. Like when you miss a franchise, like whatever he said it's called, like EA College Football Championship Ultra Plus Battle Pass, whatever, it's much easier to get people hyped for the new one. Much easier. So I think that's probably part of it.
Got it. So it's kind of a bit of waiting for the right opportunity for you guys, and less about meeting a cadence per se. Like we have to have a Fallout game done in X amount of years.
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say, look, obviously I can't talk about the stuff that we're working on in this moment.
Sure.
And so my desires are always like I'd like to hold the stuff back as long as possible.
Yeah.
And, my perfect scenario for games are to announce them and get them out as quickly as possible. So I know it's probably not the answer everybody wants. They want to know everything that's happening.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to come on here and like announce a brand new Fallout game, as great as that would be. I totally get it. And I support your mindset of as short of a window between, announcement and reveal, because I think it's really important. Like when you guys, I think, started that trend with Fallout 4, I think it was so paramount to where the industry was going. We were trending more and more in this direction of like, oh, it's a year, it's 2 years before we actually get the thing that.
Dude, just look at that. E3 back in the day was goated. Like so many. Like they also did this thing where everybody had wristbands that would glow so they could trigger lighting effects all at once for everybody. Man, I miss these big showcases.
We saw all that time ago, and it's changed dramatically. That's how game development works. So I love that you guys, when we actually see it, in Starfield's case, I think it just gradually looked better, which is really cool. But when we see it, we know that like that's what we're going to get. So I support your idea of like, I know you got all those secrets in the tuck, but maybe not speaking too soon on it. So with that in mind, right now, the standing, if you will, lone Fallout game, which just as you mentioned had Skyline Valley come out, is Fallout 76. And I had a question for starters and just how long you think that game would be supported for, because I'll be the first to call myself out and say there were many times I thought, looking at the roadmap, I'm like, it looks like it's kind of teetering on the edge. Like, are they going to keep going? Now it's at this point with Atlantic City, Skyline Valley. You guys are bringing ghouls into the game. I'm like, dang, it's on a whole other level. It's really won me over even. And I was very skeptical about it. So I want to know, like, what's the plan for support moving forward with 76? Because it feels like you guys are adding in ways that, like the ghoul thing for me was like a dream, because I remember reading about like old Fallout MMOs, and the idea was to have different playable races. And is there a plan to expand that? Like, how far do you guys want to keep going with 76?
We're going to keep going. Look, that game has never been more popular than it is right now as we're talking. And so we have a great kind of internal roadmap of things that we're doing for the next several years for that game. We think it's going to keep continuing. You think one of the things that you see, in the industry overall is people play their games for longer. This study at the end of last year, like the top 10 played games for 2023, the average age of those games was 6 years old.
Wow.
Fallout 76
I
is
remember
now
that.
6 years old. The only new game I think in that list was Starfield, and the only single player game, new IP, excuse me. And so we found this too with Skyrim turning 13 years old, that people really do play these games for a long time. And so for 76, we think it's going to continue and continue.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, pretty clearly it's also because like Fallout, the timeline breaks my brain every time you think about it, but like Fallout 4 happened in 2015. Elder Scrolls 6 probably around 2027, give or take a year. Some people say definitely 28. Other people are like 26 for sure. I don't know. I'm leaning towards more time will be taken. Phil Spencer, we know, gave them more time for Starfield. He encouraged them to delay it. They expected to have Starfield released in 2022. He encouraged them to delay it to 2023. So I would guess Phil gives them more time, and Papa Phil encourages them to go 27 or 28. At that point, another 6 years probably to put together Fallout 5. Like, it will be close to 20 years since the last main Fallout game by the time we get Fallout 5. At the rate things are going right now, which is like that's crazy. Like, that's crazy. So I just don't want to, yeah, you can't think about it. Exactly. Like, you can't think about it. It will drive you crazy. It'll make you feel really old. But that's part of the goal with like Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 76 is that they have a game that people can go to if they want a little bitty Fallout fix or a little Elder Scrolls fix to buy them some time while they work on other stuff. It seems like BGS in general is not interested in licensing out their properties to completely tangential studios. The exception, of course, being ZeniMax Online Entertainment with Elder Scrolls Online. They're doing that, whereas BGS is technically within their studios. They're running Fallout 76. So it seems like at this point, the odds of a like Obsidian made Fallout game are pretty low. I think Todd's probably not a big fan of that, but as with most of these things, if Daddy Phil Spencer wants it done, it's going to happen. Like, he runs all of this. If he says, no, Todd, sit down, keep rubbing my feet, like, he has to do it because he's Phil Spencer. Like, he runs the whole kit and caboodle. If he's like putting his foot down and saying, we're going to do that, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Question for the chat. Did Luke and Maddie have a podcast together or video together? Yeah. So I like 7 probably years ago when I had like no subs at all, I went on the Ham Radio podcast with Maddie and Carrick from ACG when they were doing the Ham Radio podcast together. And just a really simple thing. I think Maddie came on my podcast. We talked about stuff, and we've done a handful of collabs in the past few years, maybe 2 or 3. I don't really remember exactly how many, but we did one for Fallout or for Starfield, where I was saying how I'm not willing to give Bethesda the benefit of the doubt with some of their promises of features and hype and stuff like that. And he said he was, because he felt like they had come back from Fallout 76 enough. And so it's just a little, I mean, just a basic difference of opinions. I wasn't willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was, which is how he could like justify getting more excited for Starfield. And it was really straightforward, good video. I was really happy with it. But yeah, that was the last one we did, I think. I like Maddie. I mean, I wish Maddie the best. I think some people in my community have not been the most forgiving to him because he is much more, oh, I just skipped, damn it. Because I'm much more of a skeptic first, and he's more of a Bethesda fan first, if that makes sense. I think that leads to some people getting their expectations out of whack a little bit.
Do you have any ideas, any teases, anything you can kind of throw out there for long term? Like, I really love the idea of expeditions. In some senses, it didn't go how I anticipated. I really like what America's Playground did. I'm like, okay, cool, new open playable zones. Is there a plan to do maybe like more of those moving forward? Is that a piece of support you're thinking about doing for 76?
I think the expeditions are good. They're okay. The map expansion, we feel is a much better, we're dropping these big free content updates. I think that's a much more meaningful one. Mm-hmm. We're going to see how Skyline Valley does. There's another part to it that then is coming as well. And so I don't want to spoil everything. I think that type of thing where people can play on the map. I'm going through the list of features now. Well, I would say this. We teased the ghoul pretty early. Mm-hmm. That's pretty early for us to tease a feature that's coming early-ish next year to Fallout 76. And that's a really good one that changes how your character plays. So I think the good thing about a game like that, if you look at the last 6 years of updates we've done, I think there's close to 50 updates to the game. You see kind of, how things changed and evolved over that time period. And we feel we're able to keep that up.
Got it. One thing I've always wondered about with 76, because at times I wonder if it was kind of caught in this rock and a hard place situation where, and again, this is my own interpretation, was like, oh, I want to see content get to the next level. But you guys give it out for free, which I think has been wise, right? Because at one point it was kind of like clawing back and getting that comeback story. Now I think it's just at the most accepted it's been. People are like, this is great. This is awesome. Have you guys ever considered...
Before you ask, I mean, yes, it's been a very slow burn. And I've said in the last few weeks, you really do have to give Bethesda credit and ZeniMax credit for not canceling Fallout 76. Because if there was a game in the last decade that was like begging to be canceled, it was Fallout 76. Like, not many games can launch like that and survive 6 months. Like, it's pretty wild that it still exists at all. So I do think they deserve credit for that. They stuck with it. And now it's a solid game. Is it my kind of game? Not really. Maybe one day it will be. But, I do think they deserve some credit for what they've done, because they've taken it from an utter atrocity that I called evil, because I think it was, specifically because they knew what it was like and they still sold it to people. And that's something I just can't move past. Same with like Cyberpunk with CD Projekt Red. Like that's a next level of like of tomfoolery that it needs to be considered, because they knew it was broken and they still sold it to people. But they fixed it, they figured it out. And I think with Fallout 76 especially, that was coming at a time in ZeniMax's history where there was a lot of pressure from on high, from the board, to get these things out, because they knew they were selling soon. And they needed to have big live service games that could come out and hype up a potential buyer. So they just had to get it out. I think now, with the benefit of hindsight and the historical record, there's much more to suggest that the launch of Fallout 76 in the way that it did launch had much less to do with Todd and much more to do with like Robert Altman. I think his name is Robert Trump. He's Trump's brother, who was on the board of directors at ZeniMax. People like that forced them to get it out the door because they wanted to sell. So I think that's a lot of it. Again, maybe they talk about that. Maybe he asks them, what the hell happened with Fallout 76? Maybe he does, but that's the impression I get at this point. Yeah, it's the callers are always the issue. Well, because they don't know anything about game development. And so then they're like shocked when the game launches broken and the devs are like, yeah, we told you. We still had 15,000 bugs in our database. And they're like, I don't know what that means. What do you mean? Have you seen my paychecks? 15,000 is nothing. They just have no idea. Like, no idea. Oh, which is kind of funny. Malt dairy. Oh, dude, that makes me thirsty for a malt. I love malts. Shakes are good. Malts are great. For better or worse, Matty is a mark, and that's not a bad thing. You just have to remember that whenever you're watching his channel, you don't go to his channel for critiques. You go for the hype. Well, I think it just depends on what's being discussed. Like, people should know, and I try to be very transparent with this. Like, I love Ancient Egypt. If I talk about a game that has Ancient Egypt as like the setting, I'm going to give it like a +1 or +2 just because I love Ancient Egypt as a setting, right? Like, and I try to be upfront with those biases because they're there. Like, even if I could pretend they're not, I could pretend like, no, I'm super level headed with it. No, with Ancient Egypt, I'm a total fangirl. I love it. I eat it up. I want more. And with Matty, I think he's a fan of Bethesda stuff. And if you've watched anything of Matty's, like you know that's no mystery. The same thing, like I'm a fan of Assassin's Creed games. They have a lot of problems. Like I said, I called their last one a travesty of open world design. I thought Valhalla was trash, I think is the technical term. Trash app, let me be precise, not a total jerk. I think it gets ridiculously repetitive after about 20 hours. If you play Valhalla, you got it on sale, you play it for 20 hours, and then you put the controller down and never touch it again, you probably have a decent time. If you try to like play the whole damn thing all the way through, you're going to be hella burnt out on
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah. Someone's watching me. He's always watching me, watching over me, keeping me safe. It's true.
It's just going to come across like I'm advocating for it. I love free stuff, but have you considered like, oh, we could push the needle with this piece of content and do a little bit more, but we'd have to charge for it? Or it's like the idea moving forward, 76, like let's continue to keep this just free updates often. Cause I know you guys already have like the battle pass and the atomic shop and so on. So have you ever thought about charging for like actual added on, quests or locations that maybe let you get a little more ambitious because you get a little back?
The good news is that the other things you talked about, like the atomic shop, Fallout First, the seasons and rank ups and all of these things that are there.
That was like a little abrupt. He didn't mention Fallout First, I don't think. I think they might have adjusted this or cut part of it.
Fallout. The good news is
like
or locations that maybe let you get a little more ambitious because you get a little back.
The good news is that the other things you talked about, like the atomic shop, Fallout First, the seasons and rank ups and all of these things that are there. And I know like that kind of, you see it in games. Sometimes those types of monetization, they get a negative reaction. But the one thing they do allow us to do is do these big expansions and give them to everybody for free. And so I think there's a debate there and like, what is the right approach? I will say that approach is working awesome for 76. And we got a really, really healthy community around the game. And that when we're able to drop like a Skyline Valley, because it is an online game, you want the community, everybody is experiencing that together. So I just want to say like here, like shout out to the Fallout 76 community. Yeah. That game obviously had a rough launch and our community really stuck with it. And given the nature of the game where we started, which is, hey, the players in this world are going to make it their own. Can't say enough about them as new players come into the game. It's the most friendly apocalypse that there could be. And we're hearing from like our elder players, people who played the game for years, how excited they were when the show came out and all these new players came in, because it changed the game for them as well. So really, really special.
Yeah, I will say the Fallout 76 community is delightful. They're very, very sweet, very kind. When I've played the game, I've had people just waltz up and just drop me ammo and weapons, be like, have fun, man, and just leave. Super, I mean, it's really cool. It's pretty rare to get that in a game like this. That being said, I think the point about monetizing a game like this is interesting, because I do think it's like you're walking a tightrope with it, because like Todd said, there are going to be people that are upset when you price things like this, when you do stuff like this. There's going to be YouTube videos made. There's going to be reactions posted online. People are going to freak out about it. And that's absolutely true. But does it move the needle? And I think pretty demonstrably, no. People freak out all the time about, like, we did that whole video on the Call of Duty gauntlet they did for the Godzilla movie or whatever, and it's like an $80 thing to get the full set. It's like $80 in microtransactions. They're just macro. It's more than the game. It's ridiculous. We make that video. Tons of people are like, yeah, it's ridiculous. This is insane. That pack probably made more money than like any AA game this year, which is ridiculous, but that's just how it is. It's the same thing with like, what was that story? What game was it? It was like a skin for something made more money than one of their standalone games. Is this it? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Monopoly Go made ridiculous amounts of money, but in the Steam top seller list, you can see Call of Duty League Los Angeles Thieves Pack 2023 has reached 11th place on there about 1 week ago, which is an operator skin pack for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2. Currently, it's far down on the list, but still sitting a respectable top 100, as most have bought it to gain advantage because the skin itself was as dark as the night before and just got altered recently, the old bait and switcherino. But that's not the point here. The point is it's discussing how a single skin for a single game is selling better than most games on Steam. Yeah, my understanding is that those lists, the top selling lists, are based on gross revenues. So it's just printing money, and that's through Steam. Like everybody I've ever played Call of Duty with launched through the Blizzard launcher. Like they don't launch it through Steam. So those wouldn't even show up here if somebody was buying through that. Like these games make so much money. These skins can make so much money. And I think what it is, honestly, is that they just learned, hey, the average, like you have 100 players, 98 of them are not going to buy a single one of these unless they get free credits. Maybe they'll buy one. But 98 of those 100 players won't buy a single one. But 2 of those people are going to buy everything. And they'll buy so much that it basically leads to the average spend per user being pretty high. You know, I think that that's the kind of thing they learned with Fallout 76 is like they can announce stuff like this, people will freak out, but they will print money from it. And they're like, yeah, cry more. I'm crying all the way to the bank. I'm crying with how much money we made today on these microtransactions. Like, that's just how this works. It's the same reason why I've tried to tell people, like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do with the information, but I've tried to tell people, like, these rage campaigns don't really have much of an impact. Call of Duty is like overwhelmingly negative on Steam, and it's still the most profitable game in the world, except maybe Monopoly Go. Like it's ridiculous how much money these things make, despite everybody hating them. You know, because it's not meant for the 98 out of the 100. It's not meant for the 99 out of the 100. It's meant for the one guy that buys everything. It's meant for the whales, and that's where they make their money. Look at the whales in League of Legends. The new $500 skin is extremely successful in Asia. There's a $500 skin in League. Jesus. It's outrageous. It's just outrageous, man. Oh, my heart.
Yeah, no, it really is an awesome community. It's not even just like a talking piece. They're so sweet. They're so nice, and feels like online nowadays it's becoming exceedingly rare. So it's super appreciated what the 76 community does. Last 76 really question I had for you. Again, this is my own interpretation, was when 76 was introduced as this sort of live service product, for me, I thought a little bit of Elder Scrolls Online, like, okay, this will be sort of the thing that's supported for a while, and we might not see a new actual Fallout entry for some time as like Bethesda goes to work on other stuff. Is there ever a fear or a trepidation from Bethesda game studios that these, like a Fallout game from a mainline entry, can't stand side by side with 76? And I guess that kind of ties into Elder Scrolls as well, because you've gotten these spin-offs, for example, since ESO, but we haven't seen like a mainline entry since then. Is there this kind of concern of like, can we have 2 Fallout games existing at once, or 2 Elder Scrolls games existing at once? Or do you want to just, I mean, was this part of the plan? Like, let 76 cook, get its legs, and get to a point now where it's doing the best it has ever been?
Oh God, aiming with a controller.
That's a really good question. And when you're sort of starting those things, we have that fear as well. Is one game going to cannibalize another? I think the good news is, as long as like the initial releases are spread out a little bit, they don't. They both find their audiences, right? Like Skyrim is still one of our most played games, while Elder Scrolls Online is celebrating their 10th anniversary and doing really well. We've noticed even when we update those games, they don't really cannibalize each other. And then you see it with...
Yeah, they're different player bases. I love Fallout, not that into Fallout 76, which is part of, like, he says that, but it's like, yeah, but part of your goal and part of the strategy with not releasing another Fallout game for 20 years... besides Fallout 76 3 years after Fallout 4. Part of the strategy is that Fallout 76 is supposed to keep Fallout fans happy until the next big game comes. But they don't cannibalize each other. The player bases don't move. There's not a lot of crossover because they're different communities, you know?
Fallout 4 kind of hitting #1 on the charts, and then 76 right behind it. And so, I mean, logic would say there's a little bit of cannibalization between the two, but much, much less in practice than we thought between these games. So, you know, when there's another Fallout, we'll call it classically single player game, my expectation is 76 is just as healthy as it is today.
Awesome.
Classically single player game. He could just be meaning that you can play Fallout 76 single player. So classically fun. But when I heard that, I got the impression that there's something between now and Fallout 5 that isn't classically single player. Am I the only one that's hearing that, or am I just reading too much into it? It was a very weird way to say that.
When there's another Fallout, we'll call it classically single player game, my expectation is 76 is just as healthy as it is today.
Awesome. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
With that in mind...
Yeah, ignore me. You are? Okay.
I had a question about kind of the future of Bethesda Game Studios titles.
Tell me the future.
you've said has years of updates on the way. You know, Skyrim still gets updated. Fallout 4 just got a next gen SKU, etc. I've started to define your games, and you tell me if this is fair or not, as quote single player service titles, end quote. Like that's how I've started interpreting it. Like this is a product, it arrives, and you guys just continue to stick with it. Should this be the expectation moving forward for your games, that they'll continue to get updated for years and years and years?
I don't know that I would put that label on it, but I think the end thing you said, which is that expectation that we'll update them for years, is true. Mm-hmm. We would look back at Skyrim, which we're still updating, right, to a small extent, and there's all of the creations and mods there. Still a hugely played game. Same with Fallout 4, that we wish we had supported them longer, right? And we're still doing work there. So going back to that people staying in games, we went into 76 knowing, hey, this is a game we're going to support for as long as we can. Starfield, we go into that knowing the same thing. And as we go into Elder Scrolls 6, we sort of, with all of these games, you got to start now by thinking about like a 10-year horizon, right? How do we support a game for that long? And that's the trick. Like, as we sit here right now, our games have never been more popular. We have last month.
Yeah. By this, though, is a dangerous metric to justify yourself by, or your decisions by, because there's more people online playing games, interacting than ever. That doesn't necessarily mean that your products are the best they've ever been, you know? And in the last interview that Todd did with Greg Miller, when he was asked about the reception to Starfield, the kind of mixed reaction, he just went to player counts and like, well, we have this many players. It's true. It's also Game Pass. Because if you have Game Pass, I could almost guarantee you've played Starfield. Because that's just how Game Pass works. So it's not necessarily the best indicator of quality to just point at, look how many players we have. Yeah.
25 million players in our games. And so it's just like a staggering amount of people.
Yeah.
You want to know the most crazy thing? Just listen to that again, and I'm going to break your brain.
Popular. We have last month 25 million players in our games. And so it's
25 million in a month. Now, granted, that would have been, this was recent, so that would have been May, coming off of the show. The show was April? When was the show? I want to say it was April. Fallout TV show. Yeah, April 10th is when the first episode dropped. So, yeah, still a little bit of coming off of that. Like, Bethesda Game Studios is huge. Again, one of the big benefits is Game Pass. We talked with Joe Raptor on the podcast like 2-3 weeks ago about Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is like a big enough franchise that it basically holds up a multi-billion-dollar company in the form of Ubisoft. Okay? Like, it's Assassin's Creed and Rainbow is pretty much what Ubisoft has going for them. I know you could say, well, they have Tom Clancy. Like, when have they done something with Tom Clancy that really moved the needle, right? Like, it's been ages. So I think, you know, Splinter Cell. Yeah, they got Splinter Cell. They got Sands of Time remake, but nothing that's really generated revenues and profits. Assassin's Creed as a franchise basically keeps that multi-billion-dollar company afloat. And in the last 12 months, or through 2023, they had like 30 million players, unique players total for the entire year. Now, granted, they didn't have any new games, but BGS also didn't have any new games in May of 2024. Like, there are so many people playing these games. It's wild. It's wild. Like, there's a lot of speculation for like why Microsoft might be acquiring ZeniMax, why they might be going after it. Like, yes, they benefited by getting Arcane and by getting the Wolfenstein crew and by getting id Tech. Yeah, those were great. BGS was like the diamond they really wanted. Their franchises just have such a strong player base and community. It's wild. Yes, they just had a tremendously successful TV show that they were riding, you know, the wave of, but I'd like to know what the player counts were like in April. Was it also 25 million or was it more like 35? What were the player counts like in February and March leading up to the show? Was it down at like 5 to 10 million? Yeah, I'd like to know where that spike came in and what the normal level is outside of the TV show. But the point is, BGS franchises, Starfield, Elder Scrolls, and Fallout are like doing bigger things and moving more people than even a huge giga franchises like Assassin's Creed, which is wild.
It's just like a staggering amount of people
Yeah.
and players that we hear from, where our number one job always is like, how are we serving that audience on a month-to-month basis? So we're taking care of them while also developing, new products.
With that in
Mind.
because you mentioned like future games. I know you want to.
Yeah, XX Otter, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is what you get at a Luke stream. Yeah, none of those like reaction videos where it's like, oh, it's a 20-minute video, we're gonna react to it, and my clip is 21 minutes. No, I struggle to even like remember that I'm reacting to a video because we go on so many tangents like this.
To let it have its moment and everything, but is Elder Scrolls 6 like in that bag of, yeah, we got to start thinking long-term roadmap for that, what's 10 years of support looking like for that? Because I remember you said with Skyrim, that kind of changed your outlook on how things work, because people just kept coming back to Skyrim, and it's like you continue to support it. So with Elder Scrolls 6 going in with that knowledge, is the plan like a long-term support for that too?
Oh, my screen just went
100%.
black.
Yeah.
Still working.
Yeah. Seeing what Skyrim has done or other games. And I think you could say, look, for Elder Scrolls 6, yeah, I'll just stop there. we know people are going to play it for a long time.
What's with your hard on for Bethesda? Well, it's hard and it's on. I don't know what to tell you, man. Things work down there. It's just how it is.
And it's not just, I think a game like that, it's not just what it means for content. It goes further than that in, the type of game, what it means for your character, what it means for other things, to say, hey, can this be something that you come back to? And so we see that with Skyrim, what people do in the game today. And I'm, even though it's popular, what are people doing when they come back to the game after, putting it down for a few years? So
I have more Elder Scrolls questions, but I want to get this straggling Fallout question out of the way, and we'll move on to Elder Scrolls. One thing that a lot of fans have asked about with the Fallout franchise is about Fallout 1 and 2. They could use a little modernization. I know some OG fans may disagree with that, and I respect and understand that. But has there ever been a thought or an idea internally to maybe, I look at Wasteland as an example, like Wasteland 1, you can go ahead and play on Xbox. Has there ever been a thought to port these games, make them a little more beginner friendly? Because the most common thing I hear about Fallout 1 and 2, which is a shame, because I was one of those people who was introduced to Fallout with 3. And when I first saw Fallout 1 and 2, I probably had the same thought many did, which is like, that's not Fallout. What is that? Like, is that once I opened up to it, I was like, oh my God, these are incredible video games. And like more people need to experience these. And I think more people would appreciate, especially things you guys have done with like the Fallout TV show, which clearly pull from the originals in a lot of ways. Have you ever considered like modernizing these in any way? Because I know it's a little bit of a tougher get because, this is such an old project, but whether it be on PC or consoles, has there ever been a consideration of modernizing them, making them more beginner friendly? Have you ever thought about that?
Well, look, I love the question and agree with a lot of what you said. A main priority for us is to make sure they're available and you can still play them. So on the PC, obviously they're there for people to go and get and play, and making sure that, they run okay. As far as sort of beyond that, we've talked about it, but our priorities in terms of, hey, let's go do dev work and make certain things work. They haven't been in those areas. So sure. Again, priority is, hey, can people load it up and play it? And I do think we want it to load up and run well. The rest of it, like I could argue, I think some of the charm of games, from that area in the original Fallouts is a little bit of that age, right?
Yeah.
So
I kind of agree with Todd here. I think there would be no way to modernize them without just dumbing them down. Like, for example, we did that little I tried of the original Fallout. And there's a thing where like you go to this one place and there's an elevator shaft. There's nothing telling you, as far as I saw, maybe I just missed it, but there isn't really anything pointing in a specific direction saying you need to go find a rope and then click on that rope and then click on this elevator shaft to interact with it, to use the rope to descend into the shaft. It just kind of is there. And you just got to either know or you got to put it together and just try a bunch of stuff. But that's part of the fun of Fallout 1 is that there's so many opportunities and cool interactions once you realize, oh, I can take pretty much anything in my inventory and potentially interact with this or that or this or like, that's so cool. That's super cool. And that's part of the magic of it. That type of design, though, would not work in 2024. I don't think you could release that kind of game today and have mainstream success. Some more niche players would love it, but I don't think the mainstream response would be that great. So I think, preserve the games. Yes. Modernize them. I don't think there's a way to do it without just a total remake. Now, a total remake could be cool. If they took like the game of Fallout 1 and remade it with modern tools, that could be super cool. It would be it would significantly change, which is why they probably haven't done it, because they're like, that would just be Fallout 5. So let's just not do that, So I'm sure that's part of it.
I would never want to sort of, paste over some of that with, we changed how this works, so it's more modern. Again, so as long as you can download it, as long as it loads up and runs, I think I'd like people to experience it the way it was.
No, I totally respect that. So what if you had it as the way?
I heard people take that clip and infer from that they're not doing a Fallout 3 remake or remaster, which I don't know how you can go that far. Like, he's clearly talking about the old Interplay, like OG Fallout games, not Fallout 3.
It was on consoles. Is that ever I don't even know if that would be possible with the way the game controls, but have you thought of that?
Anything is possible, but that's going to be a longer dev throw. And you sort of have to ask yourself, is that where we want to put our time right now? Or is it best played the way it was on a PC? And I think right now, if you ask me, I think the best way to play it is on a PC, mouse and keyboard, the way it was.
Sure. I appreciate you being clear on that. With that, those are my Fallout questions. Just want to dovetail a little into Elder Scrolls, and then we'll move to Starfield. Elder Scrolls fans have had to wait a long time for a little love. And now that Starfield's done, we're not done, I should say, but Starfield's out. We're figuring things out with that. We're looking ahead. We're looking at Elder Scrolls 6. And the question always is, why the long wait between Skyrim and Elder Scrolls 6? And you've answered that a multitude of times, so I'm not going to try to bog you down with that question. But it kind of goes to the source of the same Fallout question I had for you about spin-offs. I think, well, I don't know if Elder Scrolls could have the similar style, like New Vegas spin-off, if you will, where it feels like a mainline game, but it's done by a different developer. You guys experimented what felt like briefly, like you had Elder Scrolls Online. That's a success. You had Elder Scrolls Legends. I know that got shut down a couple of years later. I feel like the spin-off ideas are like very plentiful. Like I could see an immersive sim style game with like the Dark Brotherhood or something like that would be sick. But have you guys ever spun your wheels on that? Or because again, I'm coming from the interpretation of what I see from like my community and various communities online. Some people think like Bethesda's super protective of Elder Scrolls because that's your baby, right? Like Morrowind, your guys' backs were against the wall. And this was like your comeback game. And it really put you guys in a place in the industry where like you just had success after success. And here you are now. So are you as protective of Elder Scrolls as people online dare to suggest? And is there ever a world where maybe someone else gets their hands on the Elder Scrolls franchise for some sort of additional work beyond Elder Scrolls Online?
Well, first, I would say is we're protective of all the franchises as you think. Like, we want to make sure they're great and we're serving the audience really, really well. And so, I mean, it's kind of the same answer from Fallout, which is there are a lot of things we look at with Elder Scrolls. You mentioned an immersive Dark Brotherhood sim. I'm not suggesting that wouldn't be a bad game, but I don't view that as filling some hole. I mean, I think what people want out of Elder Scrolls is a mainline game like Skyrim, like Oblivion. And if I look at the franchise again, Elder Scrolls Online has done so well. I can't say enough great things about the team at ZeniMax Online, really good friends with Matt Fire, and what they've done over a decade with that game in a very difficult market, making an MMO. Now, and I've said this, the gap between, I think I saw this on the Twixter, that it's the 6th anniversary of us releasing the teaser for Elder Scrolls 6.
Yep.
It might be today.
Man. Really? Okay.
And so that did make me pause and say, oh, wow, that has been a while. And so appreciate that weight. Like I was talking about college football, like, and now that we're working on Elder Scrolls 6 and we get to see it here in the studio, you know, you do miss it. And so appreciate all of those thoughts and are with the fans on that. And we're working hard on it. And so, you know, one day we'll have it to everybody.
The couple of main takeaways from that is, you know, we are as protective as everybody thinks we are, and we're working hard on it. And he's also previously said earlier in the interview that like he doesn't think it's bad to miss something or to have that. And I think all of that ties into this, which is just, does BGS need to do a New Vegas spinoff for Elder Scrolls or for Fallout? And the answer is just no. They just don't. Like, they could do that. They could permit somebody else to make it. Might be good, but the other thing is, it might not be that good. That's an outcome not many people are willing to consider, it seems. You know, New Vegas is a bit of a cult classic, but it was thrown together in 18 months. The reception at launch was good. It wasn't considered a masterpiece back when it did come out. It was like 84 on Metacritic at the time, I think. And because they missed the bonus target by 1 Metacritic point. You know, they needed the average reviews to be at like 85 and they came in at like 84. So there are definitely some rose-tinted glasses with a lot of this stuff. And I think, you know, BGS is looking at this and they're like, hey, other teams that might make it, sure, maybe Obsidian, but also Obsidian, their recent releases, Pentiment being a very unique niche game that reviewed very, very well. But there are other games that are closer to what like a New Vegas 2 would be like, such as the Outer Worlds. And then eventually we'll get Outer Worlds 2, but those have also not reviewed amazingly well either. So it's like, do they really want to give up the franchise for a few years, let them do that, and potentially release an okay game or a bad game, you know? You know, people just assumed or have assumed that a New Vegas 2 by Obsidian would be amazing and a masterpiece. And it could be, but that's an assumption. It's not necessarily a given. And I think for Todd, he's looking at it and they're very protective of the franchise. And he's like, what do we get out of that? Other than people not asking us for the next Fallout for a few years because it's coming from someone else. Like maybe they like being constantly hounded for the next Fallout thing. So anytime they announce anything for Fallout, people get super excited. Maybe they're okay with that. It seems like they are. So it's not a given that this would be good for BGS just because it might be good for the community to have another Fallout fix, you know?
Yeah, you guys have been working on that for a hot minute now, it seems like. How much were you getting done with it while like Starfield was in active development? Is that something you're able to speak on?
We do. We overlap a lot in those. Sure. We give our pre-productions where we're in design and concept and talking about something. And, you know, a lot of the Starfield technology is the starting point for Elder Scrolls 6. And then obviously...
Procedural maps confirmed. Confirmed. No, not confirmed. But I think I said this once before. BGS is very iterative, right? Like everything they do in one game gets brought to the next in a tweaked way, and then to the next, then to the next. They're constantly doing that. And I don't think Elder Scrolls 6 will be any different. I think they will have some element of procedural generation. Will it be the whole thing? Hopefully not. But I do think there will be a lot of procedural generation in the Elder Scrolls 6. I also, deep cut prediction, I think there's going to be ships, actual ships in Elder Scrolls 6. And they're going to use the ship customization system from Starfield in that game. And you're going to be able to customize your own like ship, pirate ship looking thing to sail on the seas along the coast, which they showed in that announcement trailer. And you'll be able to build your own base and you know, have companions that live there, all that stuff. Does that mean that this will be fun or work well? Not necessarily. For example, with the ships, I think you'll be able to customize a ship you can use to navigate along ports along the coast. I don't think it'll be real time. I don't think you'll be able to sail it. I think you should, if they want the game to be like extra hyped up. If they showed that working, I think people get really excited. The idea that you could sail a ship in an Elder Scrolls game and have it on like your own ship that you can customize and build out, that could be really, really cool. And I hope they get it working. But my gut is telling me that it would just be another load screen thing where you hop on the dock, you walk onto the ship, and then you click take the wheel, A. Then you go grab the wheel. And then it pulls up the map. Where do you want to go? This coast. Load screen. Back in. And you're at the dock of the next place. Does that mean the game will be bad? No. But I mean, if that feels in your mind's eye, imagine if that feels outdated now, just imagine what it'll be like, because you'll probably be playing Elder Scrolls 6 on the next generation of hardware. Not even the Series X. Series X, that sounds outdated. Next generation, I think that'll feel pretty damn ancient. So I hope they're taking steps to really future-proof it.
Try to do another jump up in technology with looking at, what's coming in the future. How do we do that? And always be.
Yeah, Luke, all you're doing is describing the fast travel in Daggerfall. Or Daggerfall. Yes. Maybe they'll pitch it. They're like, no, it's not outdated. It's retro. It's all part of the plan.
Moving the ball forward.
Are you able to expand a little bit on like what that tech is, or is that just secret for now?
It's secret for now.
Okay, understood. ...
Okay, we have been talking about this interview for like what, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I feel like at this point it's gotta be an hour and a half, 2 hours, I think. Oh baby. And we are 26 minutes in. Oops. What I think we'll do is we'll probably pause there, and then we'll get into the Starfield DLC discussion on stream either tomorrow or Friday, whenever we do it, because I think that's a layup. Modding, creations, and feedback, lots of stuff there, and then changes in design philosophy. I think we can get through all of that in the next chunk. So I think that's what we'll do. Okay, we'll go back through the last half of the interview later, and we'll revisit that and finish it out. I'm so happy that there is this new attitude that hopefully becomes more mainstream, where developers talk directly to the communities, where they talk directly to the fans. Xbox has started to do it with those developer directs, and now they're greenlighting people like Todd to go and speak to YouTubers who have been covering their games for years. That is awesome. They need to do that more, because these guys, like Matty, is who BGS fans want to talk to Todd. Like that's who that's who's going to ask questions that they want to hear the answers to, Like that's actually useful. Having somebody who's been in the industry for 30 years and is like a perfectly nice person, but is pretty out of touch with the broader community, that's not that helpful. Even if they might be best buds with Todd, that's fine, but often it's not going to get you much useful information, whereas somebody like Matty can actually get in there and get some useful information and ask some quality questions, which he has. And I mean, some people might expect me to be like, no, he should get up there and yell at Todd for this or that. I think it would be nice if he asked Todd, like, Fallout 76, man, just let's be as candid as you can with the community. What happened? How does something like that happen? If he asked that question, I'd be very, very happy. Maybe he will, but towards the end of the interview, I don't know. Maybe they specifically said you can't ask that. I don't know. Todd's not a bad person, lol. He tries. He's just a funny little guy. I'm just a little fella. I'm just a funny little fella. Yeah, I get the impression, and I will say, like, I've done a lot of digging into Todd's background for this. I don't even know if we're going to call it a critique, whatever this big video is going to be. And I really am getting the impression more and more that Fallout 76 happened because it was sort of a quid pro quo, a tit for tat, where he gave Robert Altman what he wanted, which was a live service game. And in exchange, he got to expand the studio, because it was right around the time that Fallout 76 happened that BGS expanded into 2 more studios. They got BGS Austin and BGS Dallas set up. And so like that, I'm pretty sure that is probably part of the consideration that happened. Does that justify it? I don't necessarily think that totally justifies it, because he still sold a broken product to a lot of people. But I also think that the decision to launch it in that state was probably above his pay grade. Yeah, Rabbit Wolf. But then some people will say that he's a shill from now on who only wants to keep his connections, so he can't trust what he says. I mean, I think people are going to say that no matter what, whenever something cool happens to somebody. But at the end of the day, like, you can, if you don't trust what a certain creator or reviewer or whatever says, cool, don't watch the review. If you don't trust what I say because I've said that I'm historically an Assassin's Creed fan, I've played these games since I was a kid, okay, I'm not entitled to your views. I'd love it if you watched my stuff. I appreciate you guys watching my stuff, but I'm not entitled to it. If you don't want to watch my videos, you don't have to. Nobody's forcing you. You know, it's a bummer for me because I'd like you to watch them, but I'm not entitled to your views, you know? Like, you don't have to click. But I do think that it's, yeah, okay, bye. Yeah, all of a sudden the stream just but like, it's just something where the audience will kind of navigate to and drift where they feel respected and represented, I think. And Matty has a community, of course, of a lot of Bethesda fans, which is why this interview did so well on his channel. Whereas we've seen Todd do interviews with other like well-known industry insiders or whatever, and those interviews don't do well at all. You know, those interviews might tank. I mean, there's even instances of like this, where there's been occasions where Todd's done interviews recently and it does 93,000 views after a month. And then Matty posts his, and in 3 days he's at 330,000 views. That's awesome. And it's because the community that wants to watch this kind of interview wants to hear somebody like Matty ask those questions. And so I hope this continues more. I hope Todd gives him more interviews. Maybe it becomes a normal thing. Because again, if anybody deserves that interview, it's Matty. So good for him, and I hope to see more. He took my thing. Red flag.